My son would not be alive today were it not for Logan. He was only a 10-month-old German Shepherd puppy who wore a worn-out red bandana and possessed a heart that felt bigger than the entire world. Somehow, defying all odds, he rescued my son's life when nobody else could. I sat there in the stark hospital room, my hand clutching the cool metal bar of Eli's bed. The erratic beeping of the monitors punctuated the silence. My son lay still, a web of tubes and wires connected to him, his little chest rising and falling with fragile, unsteady breaths. At my feet, pressed so close it seemed he could keep Eli with us by sheer force of will, was Logan. His fur was damp, and his eyes were fixated on my son with a level of devotion that brought a lump to my throat. What could possibly compensate a dog for rescuing your child? I have no idea. I doubt I ever will. The rain began early that morning, gently at first, a mere whisper on the window panes. Eli had been full of restless energy, practically climbing the walls after a week of overcast skies and rained-out baseball practices. Emily proposed we let him expend some energy playing in the backyard as she put away the last of the folded laundry. I recall uttering something foolish, like, "What's the harm? It's only a light rain." I was unaware that the river bordering our property had swelled from the relentless precipitation. I was unaware that the bank had weakened in certain areas. I was unaware of any of it until it was nearly too late. It's peculiar how the moments just before a tragedy become hazy, almost surreal. Eli's laughter resonated across the yard, with Logan chasing after him, a streak of gray fur and limitless energy. Then came the abrupt, sharp cry, the sound of a splash. My world spun off its axis. By the time I burst out of the garage, my heart pounding against my chest, I could hardly see them. Eli's small form was flailing in the turbulent water, and Logan, my own Logan, plunged headlong into the river with no hesitation. He was just 10 months old, perhaps 70 pounds soaking wet, and he didn't have a single shred of surrender in him. He got to Eli within seconds, his teeth clamping onto the hood of Eli's jacket. The current resisted, pulling them both downstream, but Logan embedded his paws into the soft mud of the bank, growling low and desperately, refusing to surrender his grip. I reached the river's edge just as Logan, clawing and struggling, pulled my son onto the shore. He dragged him back to my side, back to the world of the living. I don't recall much of what happened next. Emily screams, the neighbors rushing over, sirens cutting through the damp air. Me, holding Eli's limp form, crying his name repeatedly while Logan stood beside us, trembling, bleeding from scrapes on his legs, unwilling to depart. Now, here we were, enclosed by hospital walls, surrounded by beeping machines, with a boy battling his way back to us and a dog who had resolved that he would not accept defeat. I reached down, placing my hand on Logan's wide head. "You saved him, buddy," I whispered. His tail gave a weak thump against the linoleum floor, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to think we would be all right, because Logan was there, and he was not giving up. Not then. Not ever. I leaned back in my chair, watching the monitors as if they were the sole force keeping Eli alive. Emily was huddled on the small sofa by the window, her face ashen, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She had not said much since our arrival, only quiet murmurs to Eli, small assurances that all would be well. I wasn't sure if she was saying it for his benefit or her own. Logan stirred beside me, releasing a low, weary whine. I reached down instinctively, scratching behind his ear and feeling the soft, moist fur between my fingers. He leaned into my touch, his body warm and solid against the cold linoleum. That dog had not strayed more than a few inches from Eli's side since we had come through the hospital's doors. The nurses had initially tried to make us leave him outside, citing hospital policy. But when they witnessed the way Logan guarded Eli, refusing to be moved, unwilling to be parted from the boy he had rescued, they granted an exception. They termed it special circumstances. To me, it was something different. It was family. I shut my eyes and let the memories wash over me. The day we brought Logan home from the shelter, Eli had protested sitting in his car seat, adamant that Logan needed him. So, we allowed him to sit in the back. Logan curled up next to him, Eli's small arms wrapped securely around the puppy's neck. By the time we arrived home, they were both fast asleep, an intertwined tangle of boy and dog breathing in unison. Naturally, those initial days were chaotic. Logan was a whirlwind of energy, toppling lamps, gnawing on shoes, and chasing his tail in dizzying patterns. Yet he was also intelligent, keen to please, and fiercely protective of Eli from the very start. Wherever Eli ventured, Logan was sure to follow, a shadow with four paws and a constantly wagging tail. I recall the first instance Eli fell from his bicycle and scraped his knee. Before either Emily or I could react, Logan was there, licking the tears from Eli's cheeks, whining softly as if he could absorb the boy's pain through sheer effort. Eli had buried his face in Logan's fur, sobbing into the soft gray coat. From that point on, I understood this was not merely a pet. This was a connection, a lifeline, a solemn vow. Beyond the hospital room, the world continued without us. Nurses hurried by. Announcements echoed from the intercom. Down the hall, a baby cried. Life proceeded, indifferent to the small, private tragedies playing out behind closed doors. But within our small room, time was frozen. I observed how Logan's ears flickered with every beep, every breath, every slight movement Eli made. He was attuned to my son in a way that made nothing else seem to matter. His devotion was palpable, as tangible and firm as the bed beneath Eli and the tears welling up behind my eyes. The hours merged into one another. Nurses moved in and out. Emily drifted between sleep and wakefulness. Doctors communicated in low, measured tones, their words, like stable and monitoring, lingering in the air like smoke. And through it all, Logan remained, motionless, steadfast, and unbreakable. At one point, a young nurse came into the room with a bowl of water and a small blanket. She knelt beside Logan, offering him the water with gentle hands. Logan sniffed it, then, with a soft sigh, took a few tentative sips before settling down again, pressing even nearer to Eli's bed. "You're a good boy," she murmured, reaching out to stroke his fur. He barely moved an ear, his entire being focused on the small, sleeping figure of my son. In that moment, something inside my chest loosened, a tight, fragile thing that had been on the verge of shattering since I heard that splash. We were not by ourselves. We had Logan, and Logan was not going to let go. Not then. Not ever. Morning arrived slowly and gray, seeping through the blinds in thin, weary bands of light. I had not slept, nor had Emily. We just sat, taking turns, whispering to Eli, holding his hand, trying to will him back to us. Logan stayed curled up by the bed, his body rigid with stress, even as weariness tugged at him. It was shortly after sunrise when Eli moved. It was a subtle thing, merely a flutter of his eyelids, a slight twitch of his fingers, yet it was sufficient. Emily gasped, her grip on my arm so tight it was painful. I leaned forward, my heart beating so loudly I could hardly process my own thoughts. "Eli," I croaked, my voice hoarse from hours of not speaking. Logan was instantly on his feet, his front paws on the bed's edge, his nose just inches from Eli's face. His tail gave a tentative thump, as if he, too, was afraid to believe it. Eli's eyes flickered again, and this time they opened, blurry, disoriented, but open. He blinked up at us, his small face contorting into a frown. "Dad," I choked back a sob, nodding vigorously. "Yeah, buddy. I'm right here. We're right here." Emily was now crying freely, placing kisses on Eli's forehead and cheeks, murmuring "thank you" into his hair. And Logan emitted a quiet, fractured whine and leaned his entire body against the bed, his nose gently nudging Eli's arm. Eli turned his head slowly, saw Logan, and smiled. A small, weary, perfect smile. "Hey, boy," he whispered. Logan licked his hand, carefully and gently, as if he understood Eli's fragility. The doctors then rushed in, a flurry of scrubs, stethoscopes, and swift, skilled movements. We were moved back, Logan as well, though he resisted until I attached his leash and carefully led him away. "He's going to be okay," one of the nurses said, smiling at us from over her mask. "Your son's a fighter." I looked down at Logan, who sat at my side, panting softly, his golden eyes fixed on Eli's bed. "No," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "He's got the best team in the world." Hours later, after a series of tests, the removal of tubes, and a wave of relieved medical terminology, Eli was transferred to a more peaceful room. He was still under observation, but was out of danger. We gathered around him, drained but somehow lighter, as if the world had regained its color after days of gray. Eli slept intermittently, waking now and then to say Logan's name or to stroke the dog's fur where he lay against the side of the bed. At one point, a nurse suggested that Logan should stay outside the room for the night. Eli's lower lip began to tremble, and Logan whined low in his throat. I didn't hesitate for a second. He stays, I stated firmly. He rescued my son's life. He has earned the right to be here. The nurse nodded, her expression softening with understanding. That night, Logan slept curled up on Eli's bed, his head resting on Eli's legs, a living, breathing protector warding off any nightmares. Emily and I sat in the two worn chairs by the window, holding hands across the small space between us, observing the two of them as they slept. And for the first time since the river had engulfed my world, I allowed myself to close my eyes and believe that we would be all right. Because a love like that, pure, tenacious, and unbreakable, could pull you out of anything, even the deepest and darkest of waters. The following days were a haze of cautious optimism. Eli gained strength, his natural color gradually returning, and his voice grew louder with each call for Logan. The personnel at the hospital began calling our room the Miracle Suite. More than once, doctors and nurses would stop by simply to get a glimpse of the boy and his dog, who were inseparable, even under the harsh fluorescent lights. Logan became a permanent presence there, quietly padding around the room, lying across Eli's feet, and graciously accepting gentle pets from visitors. When Eli was awake, Logan was alert. When Eli slept, Logan stood guard. No one disputed it any longer. It was as if the two of them shared the same heartbeat. Then, one afternoon, as the rain finally subsided outside, Eli posed the question I knew was inevitable. Dad, how did Logan find me? How did he know? I swallowed hard, looking at Emily before kneeling beside the bed and running a hand through Eli's tousled hair. Because you're his boy, bud, I said. And he's your dog. He just knew. Dogs like Logan, they don't have to think. They just act. Eli reached out, his small fingers getting tangled in Logan's soft fur. Logan thumped his tail in a slow, steady rhythm against the mattress. Emily smiled, dabbing at her eyes. He's your guardian angel, darling, only with a coat of fur. Eli giggled weakly, the sound sending a wave of relief through me. He's the best dog in the whole world, Eli declared, squeezing Logan's ear with affection. Logan leaned into him, his entire body radiating pure contentment. That evening, as the sky finally cleared and a soft pink sunset painted the Portland skyline, Eli was able to sit up in bed. Logan was dutifully perched beside him. I stood by the window observing them, and I felt a profound shift deep within me. A gratitude so intense it took my breath away. I recalled the day we discovered Logan at the shelter. How he had selected Eli without a moment's pause, pressing his small body against my son's side as if he already knew he belonged with him. How I had been hesitant, concerned about the responsibility, the effort, the potential risks. If I had said no that day, I couldn't even allow my thoughts to go there. Emily came and stood next to me, her hand slipping into mine. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I am now." We remained like that for a long while, just watching them. Our son, his dog, and the unseen bond that connected them so strongly that even a furious river could not sever it. Later that night, after Eli had drifted to sleep with Logan's head resting on his stomach, Emily and I sat on the floor by the window, leaning on each other and speaking in quiet tones. "He's changed everything," Emily remarked, glancing at Logan. "Yes," I agreed. "He saved everything." We discussed getting a proper harness for Logan, something durable and bright with a tag that said hero. We talked about the backyard, about installing a more secure fence, and about getting Logan his own bed to place next to Eli's, even though we both knew he would likely end up sleeping on the bed anyway. We spoke of life beyond this hospital room, a future that now seemed attainable because of a dog who had refused to let go. As the night grew deeper and the city lights twinkled outside the window, I reflected on second chances. I thought about how sometimes the broken ones, the stray dogs, the weary families, the little boys with grand dreams, find one another at the precise moment they are most needed. And on occasion, they do more than just survive, they rescue one another. 2 days later, the doctors delivered the news we had been praying for. Eli was well enough to go home. in my hands. The discharge papers seemed like golden tickets. I kept rereading them, worried they might vanish if I blinked. Emily gathered the small collection of clothes and toys we had brought, while Eli sat on the bed, swinging his legs and smiling from ear to ear. And Logan paced the room, his tail wagging slowly and steadily, as he sensed the excitement in the air. When the nurse wheeled Eli into the corridor, Logan walked alongside him, his head at the level of Eli's hand, which rested on the chair's armrest. Staff members peered out of doorways and from behind desks to see them off. The boy and his dog, a team bound by something more profound than words. Outside, the air was crisp and clean, the rain having finally been pushed away by a faint autumn sun. Eli inhaled deeply as we assisted him into the back seat of the truck. Logan jumped up beside him without a moment's hesitation. I met Emily's gaze over the roof of the car. She smiled, that small, weary, beautiful smile. And I knew she was experiencing the same surge of gratitude that was washing through my own chest. The drive home felt surreal. Every traffic light, every rotation of the tires on the wet asphalt, every mundane detail felt extraordinary, as if the entire world was fresh and somewhat more radiant. At our house, Logan was the first to exit the truck. He leaped up the front steps, then turned and waited, his tail wagging, his eyes fixed on Eli. Eli let out a genuine laugh, full and sweet, and Logan barked once, a soft sound, as if he were laughing along. We helped Eli into the house and settled him on the couch with blankets and a large pile of pillows. Logan hopped up beside him, curling into his side as if he belonged there, which, of course, he did. It didn't take long for our lives to find a new rhythm. It began slowly, with short walks around the yard and afternoons spent napping together on the couch. Evenings were spent with Logan stretched out over Eli's feet as we watched cartoons. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles, cookies, and wide, tearful smiles. Every person wished to see the boy who had survived the river. Every person wanted to pat the dog that had pulled him back from its clutches. One afternoon, a reporter from the local news came to our door. News of Logan's heroism had spread, and they wanted to feature him in a segment on the evening broadcast. Initially, I was reluctant. We were not seeking public recognition. Logan hadn't done what he did for a medal or a moment on television. He did it because of who he was. But then I saw Eli's face brighten at the prospect of sharing the story of his best friend with the world. So, we consented. The reporter was kind, posing gentle questions and allowing Eli to recount the events in his own words. Eli sat on the couch with Logan beside him, one hand buried in the dog's fur, the other holding the frayed edge of Logan's red bandana. "He's my hero," Eli stated plainly, his voice clear and strong. The camera operator focused on Logan's large golden eyes and the way he leaned into Eli's side like a living shield. When the segment was broadcast that night, I watched from the kitchen, my hands trembling around a cup of coffee. I saw how the screen framed them, a boy and his dog. Survivors, best friends, soulmates. I was not the only one wiping away tears. The phone began to ring the next morning. Strangers from all over the city, and even from other states, called to express their thanks, to offer donations to the shelter where we had adopted Logan, and to send toys, treats, and letters addressed simply to Logan, the hero. The response was overwhelming and humbling. It was precisely what Logan merited. He had saved Eli's life, and now it appeared he was saving a small piece of everyone else's heart as well. In the weeks that followed, it seemed Logan became a local legend in our small section of Portland. Children on their bicycles would slow down as they passed our house just to get a glimpse of him resting on the front porch. Strangers would wave from the sidewalk, calling out, "Hey, hero dog." And Logan, as humble as ever, would simply wag his tail and press nearer to Eli, as if he didn't quite grasp the reason for all the attention. Yet for us, Logan was more than a hero. He was part of our family. At night, after Eli was in bed and the house was quiet, I would often find myself standing in the doorway of his room, observing the slow, steady rise and fall of my son's chest. Logan would invariably be there, stretched out on the floor next to the bed, his head on his paws, his eyes partially closed but never fully asleep, as if he were standing watch. Sometimes I would sit down beside him, running my hand over his thick gray coat, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart beneath my fingers. "Thank you," I would whisper, and he would thump his tail gently in reply. One evening, Emily and I were sitting on the back porch with mugs of coffee in our hands, watching the sun set behind the trees. Logan was in the yard, chasing the last of the autumn leaves with Eli, their laughter and barks drifting on the cool breeze. "He's not just a good dog," Emily said quietly, her voice heavy with emotion. "He's a miracle." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "We were meant to find him." Emily smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "Or maybe he found us." I thought about that idea frequently in the days that followed, about destiny and second chances, and how on occasion, life's broken pieces come together at the perfect instant to restore one another. Logan had once been a stray, a scruffy little puppy navigating the streets, getting by on sheer determination and good fortune. No one had been concerned about where he slept or if he had enough food. And still, he had managed to survive. He had persevered, perhaps because, deep down, he understood that his story was not over yet. Perhaps because he was waiting for us, for Eli, for the moment when his courage and devotion would be the deciding factor between life and death. The red bandana he had worn on his first day at the shelter was now frayed at the edges. The color had faded from numerous washings and countless days spent running under an open sky. I considered replacing it once, perhaps with something newer or more stylish. But each time I reached for a different collar at the pet store, something held me back. That bandana had become a piece of his history, a symbol of honor. It wasn't about appearing perfect. It was about survival. It was about hope. It was about a little boy and a battle-worn dog who refused to give up when the world attempted to take everything from them. As the days shortened and the air grew colder, we decided to have a celebration. Not just for Logan's bravery, but for the second chance we had all been granted. Eli wanted a party. A proper one, Dad, complete with balloons, cake, and all the trimmings. How could I refuse that? We scheduled it for the last Saturday of the month, inviting friends, family, neighbors, and even the team from the shelter where we first met Logan. Eli designed the invitations himself, carefully writing, "Come celebrate Logan, our hero," across the top in a bright red marker. When the day finally came, the house and yard were alive with laughter and conversation, the air filled with the aroma of grilled burgers and sweet frosting. Eli wore a t-shirt that proclaimed, "My best friend saved my life," in bold letters across the front. Logan, naturally, wore his red bandana, along with a new tag that simply said, "Hero." People brought presents, not only for Eli but for Logan as well, bags of treats, new toys, and a giant bone nearly as large as he was. Someone even brought a large framed photograph, a snapshot of Eli and Logan from the news story, the two of them smiling at each other as if they shared the world's best secret. Looking at all the faces, the laughter, and the happiness that permeated every part of our home, I felt a sense of peace settle in my chest, warm and firm. This was the appearance of hope. This was the appearance of love. And at the very heart of it all, with his tail wagging, his tongue out, and a joyful grin, stood Logan, our miracle, our family, our hero. As the final party guests departed and the sun sank low behind the trees, bathing everything in a warm, golden light, I found a quiet moment to sit on the porch steps. Logan came over and flopped down next to me, pressing his side against my leg as he always did. His red bandana was slightly askew, one corner fluttering gently in the breeze, but he wore it like a badge of honor. Eli was still in the yard, chasing bubbles with some of the neighborhood children, his laughter echoing through the cool evening air. Emily sat in a lawn chair nearby, her face weary but illuminated with a serenity I hadn't seen in months. I rested my hand on Logan's head, feeling his steady warmth, the way his entire body seemed to vibrate with contentment. "You did good, buddy," I murmured. "You did real good." Logan leaned into my hand, letting out a slow, happy sigh. It was easy to forget sometimes, seeing him now, strong, confident, and so full of life, that he had once been a stray, that he had been unwanted, ignored, and left to survive on his own. I wondered about the people who had given him up, if they ever thought of him, if they knew what a treasure they had lost. Likely not. What they had lost became our miracle. Logan's ear flickered, and he looked up at me with those golden eyes that always seemed to see straight into my soul. It wasn't just gratitude I felt in that moment. It was awe. Because somewhere, amidst all the turmoil and sorrow in the world, Logan had made his way to us, to Eli, to a purpose greater than himself. And he had answered that call with everything he possessed. A soft thud drew my focus back to the yard. Eli had stumbled, falling hard onto the grass. My heart jumped into my throat. But before I could even make a move, Logan was already up, dashing toward him, his movements swift yet controlled. By the time I got to them, Eli was sitting up and laughing, a small grass stain on his jeans, but otherwise unharmed. Logan stood guard over him, his tail wagging while his body remained tense, as if he were prepared to fend off any potential danger. "I'm okay, boy," Eli said, scratching behind Logan's ears. "Just clumsy." Logan licked his face once, as if to say, "I'll be the one to decide that." I ruffled Eli's hair and helped him up. "You're tougher than you look," I teased, and he grinned up at me, the gap from a recently lost front tooth making him appear even younger. Together, we walked back to the porch, Logan trotting contentedly between us as if he were escorting us safely home. As we sat down again, Emily brought out mugs of hot chocolate, giving Eli his favorite with extra marshmallows on top. She handed one to me as well, and Logan watched with wide, expectant eyes until Emily laughed and went back inside. She returned with a special treat just for him, a homemade dog biscuit in the shape of a bone. He took it gently from her hand, his tail thumping against the wooden porch. "Best day ever," Eli declared, his mouth full of marshmallow. I smiled, lightly tapping my mug against his. "Best day ever." Logan barked once, a soft, happy sound, and we all laughed. The sun dipped lower, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Crickets chirped in the grass. Down the street, a porch light came on. The world felt small, safe, and perfect in that moment. And sitting there with my family around me and Logan resting his head on Eli's lap, I had a realization. This day was more than just good. It represented a new beginning for our entire family, the kind of chance you don't waste, the kind you hold on to with all your might. Fall deepened in Portland, bringing with it brisk mornings and trees scattering gold and crimson leaves across every walkway and street. Our lives fell into a pattern that seemed more valuable now, as if every minor detail carried more weight than before. I saw it in how Emily would stay at the table longer after dinner, watching Eli and Logan playfully wrestling on the floor. I saw it in how Eli would look over his shoulder just to confirm Logan was behind him, though he always was. And I noticed it in myself, too, in the way I would pause before turning off the lights at night to watch them sleep. Eli nestled under his superhero blanket and Logan stretched out at the foot of the bed, his body forming a protective barrier around my son. There were times I found myself holding my breath, scared to even blink, for fear of missing the absolute marvel of it all. One Saturday morning, we decided to take a family outing to the river trail. Not the location where the accident occurred, but a quieter, more secure section upstream where the water was gentler and the path was well kept. Emily prepared a picnic, and Eli packed Logan's favorite toy, a knotted rope that was chewed almost to shreds, but which he cherished above all else. It felt significant, as though it were essential to forge new memories by the water, to transform the fear into a gentler feeling. That morning, the trail was stunning, a vibrant tunnel with the sound of crunching leaves under our feet. Logan trotted ahead, his red bandana a bright contrast against the natural scenery, his ears alert, his nose twitching with every new scent. Eli laughed as Logan leaped after falling leaves, snapping at them as if they were butterflies. We chose a spot near the river to spread our blanket, the water sparkling in the sun like a living ribbon. It was tranquil here. The current was slow and even, and the banks were grassy and sloped. Eli threw the rope toy a short distance, and Logan dashed after it, returning it with pride, his tail wagging so forcefully his entire body swayed. As I observed them, I felt that old apprehension stir within me, the memory of cold, surging water and of panic gripping my throat. But then Eli turned, his face illuminated with pure, unadulterated joy, and Logan barked happily, dancing around him. And just like that, the fear's hold on me weakened. We ate sandwiches and cookies, reclining on the blanket and identifying shapes in the clouds. Emily and I held hands, our fingers intertwined as they had been since we were children ourselves. "Look, Dad," Eli suddenly exclaimed, sitting up and pointing across the water. There, on a fallen log, sat a family of ducks, their feathers gleaming in the sunlight, their gentle quacks carried on the breeze. Logan sat beside Eli, his head tilted, watching them with keen curiosity but without any move to chase them. "He knows," Emily whispered. "He knows this is a place for peace." I nodded, feeling tears form in the corners of my eyes. Logan wasn't just a dog. He was a soul, a guardian, a reminder that even when life tries to strip everything away, there is still beauty worth fighting for. As the afternoon lazily and warmly unfolded around us, I realized something more. Logan had restored Eli's childhood. The river was not victorious. Fear was not victorious. Love had triumphed. Trust had triumphed. Logan had triumphed. Later, as we gathered our things and started back down the trail, Eli walked with his hand resting lightly on Logan's back, as he always did now. It was as if they were connected by something stronger than a leash, more potent than words, something that could withstand even the deepest waters and outlast even the darkest storms. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that wherever life would lead us, wherever the path might twist or the river might flow, we would face it as a team. Myself, Emily, Eli, and Logan, the heart and soul of our family. The days grew colder after that, the sky often softening to a dull silver in the mornings, the ground covered in a crisp frost by dawn. Thanksgiving arrived and passed in a whirlwind of family, laughter, and an abundance of food. Eli created a special place setting for Logan at the table, a paper plate he decorated himself with crayons, writing "Best Dog Ever" in crooked letters across the top. We gave Logan his own special meal, bits of turkey, mashed potatoes without butter, and a few green beans that Eli secretly passed to him under the table. He took it all with a quiet grace, his tail thumping against the floor as he licked Eli's hand in gratitude. Christmas lights began to appear around the neighborhood, and Eli pleaded to help hang them on our house. Logan trotted beside him, getting his nose into everything, his tail sweeping ornaments off the lower branches of the tree inside until we finally learned our lesson and hung them higher. Life fell into a routine that was warm, radiant, and wonderfully normal. And through it all, Logan was a constant presence. At the bus stop in the mornings, Logan would sit next to an Eli, his head held high, a sentinel in a red bandana. He would wait until the bus doors shut and it pulled away before trotting back to the porch, keeping an eye on the road until it brought Eli home again. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of them through the window, Eli chatting animatedly to Logan about his day, and Logan listening as if he understood every single word. Perhaps he did. I wouldn't have been surprised anymore. One night, after Eli had gone to bed and the house was quiet, I discovered Emily sitting on the couch with Logan's head in her lap. She was stroking his fur slowly, a distant expression on her face. "He's getting bigger," she said softly. I nodded, dropping onto the couch beside her. "Growing into those paws finally." She smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that twisted something inside me. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head, burying her hand in Logan's thick ruff. "Nothing. Everything's good. It's just, I keep thinking about that day, how close we came to losing Eli, how everything could have been so different if it weren't for him." I didn't have to ask who she meant. I reached over, covering her hand with mine where it rested on Logan's side. "We didn't lose him," I said quietly. "Because of Logan, because of this crazy, stubborn, loyal boy who chose us." Logan sighed contentedly, his body warm against ours. "We're lucky," Emily whispered. "Yeah," I agreed. "We're the luckiest people in the world." We sat there for a long time, the three of us tangled together in the quiet comfort of the living room. The only sounds were the soft ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the heater. I thought about how easily we could have missed each other, how Logan could have ended up somewhere else, with someone else, or worse, not at all. And I realized something that settled deep and sure inside me. There are no accidents when it comes to love. Not the kind that finds you when you're lost. Not the kind that pulls you from the water. Not the kind that sits by your side through every storm and every silence. We were not the ones who rescued Logan from the shelter that day. It was he who saved us, time and again. And he would continue to save us in the quiet, steady ways that matter most, every single day for the rest of his life. Because that's what love does. It's what heroes do. Spring was beginning to whisper its way back into Portland by the time Eli and Logan stood side by side once more at the river's edge. This was not the rushing, treacherous section near our former backyard, but a new spot, calmer, wider, and nestled within a public park where families came to have picnics, fish, and let their dogs play freely. It had been Eli's idea. "I want to show Logan he doesn't have to be scared," he had said one morning, pulling on his jacket and taking hold of Logan's leash. "I'm not scared anymore, and he shouldn't be either." I realized then the extent of their mutual healing and how much they had matured in tandem. We filled a backpack with sandwiches and apples, a couple of old towels just in case, and of course, Logan's favorite rope toy, now frayed to almost nothing, but still his most treasured item. The three of us, myself, Eli, and Logan, started down the path beneath a sky so blue it appeared to be a painting. Logan trotted between us, his red bandana clean and bright against his gray fur. His ears were alert, his steps light. He would occasionally glance up at Eli as if to check in, and each time, Eli would smile back and give him a little scratch behind the ears. When we got to the river, the water was smooth and slow, with sunlight dancing on its surface like a million tiny mirrors. Families were spread along the banks, children laughing, dogs barking, the air vibrant with the sounds of life continuing. Eli knelt at the shoreline, pulling off his shoes and socks. Logan stood next to him, his tail wagging, though I could see a hint of tension in his body, a deeply buried memory. "It's all right, pal," Eli said gently, petting Logan's side. "It's only water. You don't have to go in. I just want you to see." Then Eli did something that caused my heart to clench so tightly I had to momentarily avert my gaze. He stepped into the water, not very far, just enough for it to lap over his toes, cool and gentle. He stood there, his arms relaxed at his sides, his face tilted toward the sky. Logan whined low in his throat, uncertain, and paced at the water's edge. Then he took one step forward, then another, and another, until he was standing beside Eli, the river flowing harmlessly around his paws. Eli laughed and threw his arms around Logan's neck, burying his face in the dog's damp fur. "You are so courageous, Logan," he murmured. "You're the most courageous dog in the entire world." I felt a hot sting in my eyes and wiped them away quickly, pretending it was just the sun. After that, everything seemed to become easier. We played fetch along the grassy banks, with Logan dashing after sticks and splashing through the shallows with a joy that illuminated his entire being. Eli chased after him, both of them slipping and laughing, their voices carried across the water like a song. At one point, Eli grabbed the rope toy and waved it above his head. "Come and get it, Logan," he yelled, and Logan barked, launching himself toward Eli, his tail a blur of happiness. I sat on a nearby bench, my hands clasped around a now-cold coffee cup, and just watched them. My son, my dog, my miracles. When the afternoon began to wane and the shadows grew long across the grass, we started back up the trail toward the truck. Logan trotted ahead, the rope toy held proudly in his jaws. Eli skipped a few steps, reaching up to take my hand and swinging it back and forth as he used to when he was younger. "Best day ever, Dad," he said, his face flushed and bright. I squeezed his hand. "Yeah, buddy, best day ever." Logan looked back at us, his golden eyes shining, his tail wagging slowly and steadily, and I considered all the things that might have been different, all that we could have lost. On the contrary, we had acquired everything that was truly important. Because sometimes, when the world seems at its darkest, when the water rises and the ground gives way beneath your feet, you find a light. Sometimes you discover a boy and his dog, positioned together at the river's bank, challenging the world to do its worst once more. And this time, you know they'll be prepared, together, always. A few weeks later, an event occurred that demonstrated once again the profound depth of their connection. It was an ordinary afternoon. Eli was in the backyard, kicking a worn soccer ball against the fence, while Logan was stretched out nearby, his head on his paws, but his eyes tracking Eli's every move. I was inside, fixing a loose cabinet hinge, with the window open so I could hear them both. The first shout didn't quite register. It sounded like just another burst of laughter. But then came a second, more piercing and higher pitched. "Dad, Dad." I dropped the screwdriver, my heart leaping into my throat, and ran for the door. Outside, Eli was standing motionless near the fence, his eyes wide with fear. On the other side, a large dog, a neighbor's new rescue, as I would later find out, had gotten free and was barking aggressively, its hackles raised and teeth showing. Before I could even make a move, Logan had already placed himself between Eli and the fence. His body was rigid, his tail held straight out. He did not bark or growl. He simply stood there, a formidable barrier of gray fur and muscle, his golden gaze fixed on the other dog with a serenity that was somehow more potent than any snarl could have been. The other dog lunged at the fence, growling, but Logan stood his ground, not moving forward, not backing away. Just there, unwavering, unmovable, the very picture of courage. I leaped off the porch, calling Eli's name. But it was unnecessary. Logan had already ensured that nothing could reach him. The neighbor came running, grabbing the loose dog by its collar and pulling it away with a stream of apologies. I hardly heard them. I was already lifting Eli into my arms, feeling the frantic beat of his heart against my chest. Logan stood by us, still watchful, still prepared, until he was certain Eli was safe. Only then did he lean against my side, pressing his weight against me as if he needed the reassurance as well. Later, after the adrenaline had subsided and we were all sitting together in the living room, with Eli curled up against me and Logan stretched across both our laps, I reflected on how many times this dog had stood between danger and my son. Not because he was told to, not out of any obligation, but simply because that was his nature. Emily sat opposite us, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched, tears glistening in her eyes. "He is something beyond a dog," she murmured. He is Eli's protector." I nodded, too overcome with emotion to speak. Because how can you even start to thank a soul like that? How can you ever repay a life that has been saved time and time again? You can't. You simply love them. You show them honor. You ensure they are always aware they are home, safe, and part of the family. And you never, ever take a single day with them for granted. As the evening drew in and Eli's breathing settled into the gentle rhythm of sleep, Logan lifted his head and rested it on my knee. I ran my hand through his fur, feeling the steady, quiet strength within him. "You're our hero, Logan," I whispered. He closed his eyes, his body finally relaxing completely for the first time that day, trusting that now, at last, everything was as it should be. And it was, because he was here, because we were all together. Because love, true love, always finds a way to protect what is most important. I sometimes think about it, how narrowly we escaped losing everything. How a single heartbeat, a single moment of delay, could have altered our entire world. But then I look at Logan sprawled across Eli's bed, his red bandana slightly crooked and his paws twitching in a dream, and I understand that we were saved by something more than just chance. We were saved by loyalty, by courage, and by a love that came in the form of a German Shepherd puppy who refused to give up. Logan did more than just rescue Eli from the river. He rescued us from the terror that was poised to consume us entirely. He saved us from the grief, the resentment, and the endless what-ifs that could have shattered our family. Every time I hear Eli laugh now, not just a smile, but a deep, fearless belly laugh, I know it is because Logan gave him that gift. Every time I see Emily watching them with that gentle, tear-filled smile she tries to conceal, I know it's because Logan mended something within her heart that day. And every time I feel that tightness in my own chest relax when I see them all curled up together on the couch, safe, alive, and whole, I know he saved me, too. We refer to Logan as a hero, yet the reality is that he is far more than that. He is a lifeline. He is a light in the darkness. He is a daily reminder that even when the world seems heavy and broken, there are still pure, beautiful things worth fighting for, like the love between a boy and his dog, the second chances we sometimes receive when we least expect them, and the miracles that can arrive with muddy paws and bright golden eyes.